afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Vantage Point. I'm Lisa Hamilton. This afternoon we're here with Chairman of the Local Government Commission, Mr. Mortimer Mingo, and today we'll be speaking about the affairs of the Local Government Commission here in Guyana. Now, in 2001, when Guyana's constitution was revised, it catered for the independence of local democratic organs, which include municipalities and NDCs. The intention was to see the management of these local democratic organs without the oppressive influence of central government. So the Local Government Commission was established in 2017. It is tasked with overseeing, monitoring, investigating, and examining the actions of the various councils. So I want to ask you as we begin, how was it for the Commission upon establishment? Was there a backlog of issues that you had to deal with?
Okay, first of all, thank you for having me on this program. First, I want to let you know that the Local Government Commission came into being on the 23rd of October 2017, and it came about after the Minister of Communities would have signed the order bringing into being the Local Government Commission. This commission, Parliament had approved the establishment of a Local Government Commission consistent with the Constitution of Guyana, and that this commission the bill was passed in Parliament in 2013 and it was assented to in October of 2013 by the then President of Guyana, Mr. Donald Rabatar. And like I said before, it came into the coming to being of the commission was as a result, as required by the Act, for the Minister to sign the order bringing the Commission into being. The Commission commenced its work immediately after being sworn in by His Excellency the President of our Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Mr. David Arthur Granger, and where the 8 commissioners were subscribed to the oath of office as prescribed by the Act, the Local Government Commission Act. 1 week after then, the Commission met and, in keeping again with the Act, elected the Chairman and the Deputy Chairman of the Local Government Commission. To answer your question directly, that from the time we began our operations, in which we were grateful to be accommodated at the then time before we had our present office, where our present office is located, we operated out of the Parliament building of Guyana. We had received a number of complaints, numerous complaints from both municipalities as well as NDCs. And so it could be said that we hit the road running, so to speak. We had the arduous task of putting together very quickly a staff, skeleton staff. First of all, we appointed the Secretary of the Commission, the Finance Manager. Those were the 2 major staff we operated for approximately 4 to 5 weeks before we had all the staff brought on board.
So what has been some of the challenges expressed by municipalities and NDCs to the Commission?
First of all, as we are mandated by the Act, specifically Section 13 of the Act, which states that the Local Government Commission, as an independent body, we receive complaints from not only the municipalities, but also from residents who reside in those municipalities and NDCs on any issues that will be affecting them. And these issues are varied. Some has to deal with alleged financial impropriety. Some would have to deal with the issues of land demarcation, land allocation, land distribution by some of those NDCs and municipalities. So we had our full share of complaints, if you will, as it relates to those issues. Let me hasten to say this, that the Local Government Commission, that we have oversight primarily over the administrative staff or the administrative arm of those municipalities and NDCs. You will as you are aware, that the municipalities, the councils, both the NDCs and the municipalities, they are elected by the people, and therefore they are an independent body, and they would have formulated the policies and the programs that they would have rolled out to the various constituencies which would have elected them to office. So we do not have any jurisdiction over the council itself, but rather whatever policies the council would have taken and which have to be executed by the administration, that is consistent with the Local Government Commissions Act, and most importantly with the Municipal and District Councils Act of 2801, and the case of the NDC, Chapter 2802. We just ensure that they comply with the provisions of the Act.
Okay. And what would you say is the most common challenge expressed by residents?
Basically, one, the sloth in providing service as required by those NDCs and municipalities, some of them, not all of them, I should say. Some has to do with the question of land. Specifically, we have received complaints where the municipality would have allegedly assumed ownership of some lands when in fact it's not owned by the municipalities and or the NDCs, and seeks to administer or to dispose of those lands or to administer over the utilization of those lands by way of lease, by way of in some cases sale. And when only to find out that those lands are really do not fall under the tenureship of those municipalities or NDCs.
Okay, and I know the Commission, its mandate is also examining measures that can be put in place to rectify certain challenges like these. Have you begun to examine any of these measures?
Under the Local Government Commission Act, we are required to put measures in place to speak about the standardization of operations of those NDCs and municipalities as relates to their financial affairs, their accounts, etc., and to make recommendations where necessary to the minister to have the standardization of accounts and also the financial affairs of those municipalities and NDCs. We are in the process of examining what exists there, and we are working on a paper to address those issues. And as you will know, there are some municipalities and some NDCs, as it relates to their revenue base, depends on where they are located, it differs from one municipality or one NDCs from the other. And so we have to look holistically and see how best we could have whatever is required of those municipalities in keeping with some financial practices to be implemented across the board.
Okay, and what about staffing at the Commission itself? Do you have all the staff that you would need?
We presently, as you know, the Commission is just about 2 years old. And as I said before, that we had to hit the ground running based on the number of complaints we would have received from the time the Commission came into being, and that we moved very quickly to advertise and to recruit the appropriate staff. I want to say to you that we do not have our full complement of staff presently, but we are hoping come 2020, as we ramp up our operations, as we move to fulfill our mandate in its entirety, that we will be able to have all of the staff in place to fulfill our mandate and keep in with the Act.
Okay, and what about finances?
Well, as you know, we would have received our finances come as stated in the Act have to be appropriated by Parliament, by the government, and we receive our appropriation based on our financial request, as in any other agencies or any other constitutional bodies, whatever we ask, so we don't normally get exactly all that we want. But what we do try to employ is financial prudency to ensure that whatever is allocated to us, that we use it in a manner that will seek to fulfill our mandate. There is also a question of having more, enough, but like I said, we are grateful for whatever has been allocated to us, albeit not what we would have expected, but like I said, we are hoping that as we move forward, that our financial budgetary requests from government, by government, that it will be met.
Okay, and I want to head into one of the most pressing matters in regards to the Local Government Commission that has been in the media for quite some time. It's in regards to the COI that was launched into the financial affairs of MNCC. Now, there were several findings which came out, but there was a snag in implementing these recommendations. Early in the year, we know that the High Court would have reversed the dismissal of Town Clerk Royston King. They deemed that it was unlawful. So I first want you to explain why was the COI necessary into the financial affairs of City Hall, and what were some of the steps that the Commission took before embarking on the same?
Okay. First of all, like as I said, from the time the Commission took office in October of 2017, we would have received a plethora of complaints by residents, by employees, by former employees of the city of Georgetown. On receipt of those complaints, we examined them, and we thought that the Local Government Commission did not have at the then time, and even now, the wherewithal to address all of those complaints. And in our view, in keeping with the Municipal and District Councils Act, Chapter 2001, we sought to address those complaints as stated in the Act, in where a commission of inquiry or an inquiry could have been had to address those issues. And it is against that background, the commission we met, we deliberated, and like I said, in our view, consistent with the Local Government Commission Act and the Municipal and District Councils Act, that we would have moved to have a commission of inquiry set up, consistent with the Act. Because, as I said, many of the complaints, they were very complex in nature. It had to deal with the issue of land allocation. It had to deal with the question of awarding of contracts. It had to deal with the question of employment practices. It had to deal with issues where employees or former employees of the municipality, though retired for a number of years, was not paying their gratuity and their pension, things of those nature.
Serious matters.
And we consider these are serious matters. And I said, as a new commission, and that because we wanted to act with a fair degree of alacrity, that we thought the route of setting up a commission of inquiry into those allegations, remember they are all allegations, and then we have to, evidence would have to be gathered to make a determination, the veracity of those complaints. And so we thought it's best that a local commission of inquiry would be the best route for us to go. And that is what we did.
And I think in a past interview, you would have mentioned that you sought legal advice before.
That is correct. We sought legal advice on the matter. And in keeping, again, with the Act, we sought to have someone with a legal background to head that commission of inquiry. As a sole commissioner, as you know, we had engaged retired Chancellor of the Judiciary, Justice Cecil Kennard, to do that commission of inquiry. And I want to say to you that Justice Kennard, first of all, sought to satisfy himself that in keeping with the act that he had the jurisdiction to so do. And so that is how the Commission of Inquiry was set up for the City Hall.
Okay, and we know that one of the recommendations coming out of the COI was for the dismissal of Mr. King. But could you just refresh our memories on some of the other recommendations that came out, just about 2 or 3 that you can?
There were a number of other recommendations. For example, the Commissioner recommended to the Commission, and we endorsed those recommendations, that those persons who owe their pension or gratuity that they must be paid. We did receive complaints from the NIS stating that the remittances from deductions from the employees as required by law was not remitted to NIS, and that was one of the complaints that we have received and which the commissioner dealt with, and he recommended that the municipality of Georgetown was make every effort to have those employees remittances that were deducted for NIS to be remitted to the NIS, and we endorsed that. There was the question of where land that was purportedly owned by the City Hall was leased by the then town clerk, and that the council itself was not aware of those transactions as required by the Municipal and District Council Act, where it is the council have to give approval for those kind of activities to take place or actions to take place. So there was a number of recommendations. We had instances where employees had complained about victimization, allegedly, and the inquiry was done coming out of the COI. Recommendations was made how to treat with those complaints, and we would have since instructed the City Hall to comply with those recommendations. There were also issues where persons who were provided goods and services to the City Hall made complaints so they were not paid, and the Commission of Inquiry came out of the Commission of Inquiry, and those persons that the allegations of those that those persons would have made against the City Hall, that it was substantiated, and they directed that those persons the debts should be settled by the council. So there was quite a number of complaints.
And these are fair recommendations?
Well, in the view of the Commission, yes, they are fair recommendations.
Okay, so what will be the next step of the Commission if the High Court's ruling is upheld by the Appeal Court?
Well, first of all, I don't want to anticipate that. Let us wait and see what is the outcome of the appeal, and then the Commission will take it from there.
Okay. Well, moving forward, back in January, the Commission had written to the Auditor General to conduct a forensic audit of the accounts of City Hall, as recommended by the COI. Now, the Audit Office is supposed to be handed over that audit report any day now. Has it been handed over? And if not, what is holding up the process?
Well, first of all, as you rightly said, that forensic audit came out of the recommendation of the COI, and the Commission itself would have complied with that, would have agreed with the recommendation, and so we wrote to the Audit Office to ask them to conduct the forensic audit. We're in constant contact with the Audit Office, and the latest is that the Auditor General would have informed me that for all intent and purposes the audit has been completed. They are waiting from some response from the City Hall as relates to some of the audit query, some queries on the audit. And as you rightly said, any time now we are expected to receive the final report of the forensic audit. Okay,
and how does the High Court's ruling affect the work of the Commission in this regard?
Well, like I said to you, it has not really. The Commission continues to carry out its functions as mandated by law. For example, the Commission is responsible for the appointment and employment of staff of the various municipalities and also the NDCs. We have been busy carrying out that mandate on recommendation of the various councils, both at the level of the municipality as well as the NDCs, when which vacancies would have arisen, and or where you see need for have persons to be employed to carry out the functions and responsibilities of those municipalities and NDCs. They have sought the Commission approval or for the appointment of the various levels of staff, starting from town clerks right down to the rank and file workers within the administration of those entities, NGOs. And so we have been doing our work. We still continue to receive complaints from both municipalities and NDCs in which we are addressing their issues that are of a human resources nature that affect some of these NDCs. We continue to monitor the performance as required by the Act of those NDCs in terms of their work program. We continue to receive requests from those NDCs as well as municipalities to implement wages, appropriate wages for the various categories of employees within the NDCs. What we have found is that in some NDCs, they were not compliant with the Labor Act as it relates to the minimum wage as stipulated by the government. So we have written to them and implored upon them to ensure that all the employees at least receive the minimum wage. Okay?
Was this a high number of NDCs?
A fair amount, I would want to say, a fair amount of them. Okay? And I want to say that most, if not all of them, are now compliant with that requirement.
No, that's good. I want to take you to another issue. Back in July, there were reports that a bag containing cash belonging to the MNCC was found inside a vehicle assigned to Chief Constable Andrew Fu. The Local Government Commission has been called to launch an investigation into this matter. Can you state what stage of the investigation you're at right now?
I want to say that the investigation is all but concluded. The investigation was done. A number of officers were interviewed in keeping with the whole tenets of natural justice. Some of those officers were called before the commission and to say why disciplinary action should not be taken against them as a result of that incident. And I want to say that we are hoping that by Thursday of next week we'll be definitive in our conclusion in that matter to deal with those officers.
Great. And I also want to ask you, what are the plans of the commission to reach out to far out regions in the hinterlands, the Amerindian village councils? And do you know of any issues plaguing those councils in which the commission can assist?
From the top of my head, to answer the last part of your question first, I think we would have received just about 1 or 2 complaints from Amerindian Council. And it has to do more or less, again, with financial accountability. We would have referred those matters to the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs, who has also oversight over those Amerindian councils. As you know, the Local Government Commission, we have the responsibility as an oversight body over the 10 municipalities and the 71 or 72 NDCs throughout Guyana. And these NDCs ranges from in Region 1 to Region 10. region councils again from Region 1 to Region 10. It is a challenge for us presently to reach out. We do have a program would have been in which we'd have liked to execute during this year, but because, again, as I alluded to, because of financial constraints, we were able to make the kind of contact, direct contact, or physical contact, so to speak, with those councils in the various geographic areas within Guyana. However, we were able to make contact from Region 1 with the municipality and some of the NDCs there, Region 9, Region 7, as the case might be, Region 8. Maja, there's a new council, town council has just been coming to being at Maja. Also, there are other NDCs, new MDCs has been formed. Yarra Cabra on the Linden Sussex Highway. We are engaged in those councils, NDCs, and municipalities in the far-flung Eagle by way of telephone, where there's a capability of the internet. We correspond basically by way of email, fax, etc., etc. But yes, certainly we would like to go in. We have received complaints in Region 1, in the municipality there, and in the NDC, also in Region 1 at Marijuana, and we would like to have gone in there physically to have our officers go there and conduct the investigations so that we could have a better understanding. Allegations are being made, we have to go investigate and find out the veracity of those allegations, and then to come up with a decision on how we deal with those issues that have been brought to the attention of the Local Government Commission.
Would you need a bigger budget for that?
Well, like I said, it is Guyana we're talking about, and some of the areas, to access those areas, certainly we have to access them by air, not overland, and obviously the cost of traveling by air, it's a bit on the high side. So certainly we are hoping that in 2020, when we have submitted our budget, we have catered for the outreaches in those areas and to deal with issues that affecting those municipalities and NDCs in those far-flung areas, that we could able, with the resources that will be allocated to us, we could fulfill our mandate by going out to those areas.
Okay, Mr. Mingo, as we wrap up here today, I must ask you, do you see that the establishment of the Local Government Commission in Guyana has caused a difference in the way municipalities and NDCs are managed? Do you see a positive change taking place?
Absolutely. I think if one could recall what the Local Government Commission actually, the coming to being of the Local Government Commission is to ensure the independence that you were alluded to earlier of these local democratic organs. As you know, before, in Chapter 28 of one of the local Municipal and District Council Act, the minister had the final say in the determination of how those municipalities and NDCs have been administered. And it is because of the clarion call, so to speak, from those very municipalities and NDCs and the people on the whole that would have agitated for an independent body away from the ministries or the politicians or the politics, and that the very composition of the Local Government Commission lends to that kind of transparency, lends to that kind of what I want to consider neutrality in the ensuring that these organs execute their functions. If you talk about employment, we should set out some process, how they must go about doing it, should advertise, have it shortlisted. We have an oversight. We're not taking away the responsibilities from the municipalities nor the NDCs. We just have a strong oversight to ensure that the principles of that is established to have persons employed that is being engaged done by those municipalities. In the end of the day, once the interviews is done by the municipality or by that NDC, by whatever committee they set up, we just oversee it to ensure that it is transparent, and then it goes back to the council with the recommendations to come to the local government commission to appoint the relevant person. That in itself is a big plus. That in itself is very positive. As it relates to the execution of the work program, right? Again, you know, the NDCs, and they all receive subvention from the government. They have to state what they're going to do with this subvention. We just have an oversight to ensure that whatever monies they will receive from central government, that it's been used for the purpose in which they say it ought to be used.
And have most of them been adhering to this?
Absolutely.
Okay, with your oversight from the commission?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Mr. Mingo. Is there anything else you'd like to add that I didn't ask?
I just want to take this opportunity to wish all of the various municipalities in Guyana and also the NDCs and American Council, since we are in the Yuletide season, to wish them all a very Merry Christmas. And I sincerely hope that 2020 will be a much better year, and that the service in which they provide for the people will receive much improvement. And I hope that we'll continue to have a very harmonious and a cordial working relationship with all of the local democratic organs throughout Guyana. And I want to wish again a very happy new year to all of them.
Okay, thank you. Today we had Mr. Mingo, and you would have heard he mentioned some of the challenges facing the Local Government Commission, some of its plans for 2020. He also spoke to some of the reports and so on that we can expect shortly. So you tune in to the work of the Local Government Commission, and tune in also to the Guyana Chronicle here on our Vantage Point. And join us again once again tomorrow for yet another episode.